You probably know that a pop filter does change the sound of your microphone, but how much exactly, and do some perform better than others? Well, today I've got a variety of pop filters, and we're going to do some tests. I've got a very scientific test with some white noise running through the speaker to test all these against the microphone with no pop filter, and we're going to test it on my voice and see if you can really hear a difference. Is it worth trying to not use a pop filter? I don't know. I have often not used a pop filter when I'm recording and either try to speak at an angle or further away so that plosives aren't an issue, because I don't want the pop filter ruining the sound of the microphone. But does it really? I don't know. We're going to find out. And I've got some DIY pop filters today as well. I made this out of a hanger and some pantyhose, and you can peel away one layer so that it's one layer or two, and we're going to test both. And then I found this mesh screen back from my brewing days. This is a screen that goes inside of a funnel to catch particulates from your liquids, and it's about the right size, and it's a filter. So I thought, we'll give it a go. Maybe it works as a pop filter. Probably does, but is it a good one? Now, if you're speaking directly into a microphone with no pop filter, you do run the risk of plosives. And plosives are that deep bass sound you get, real nasty, very loud. It's not really good, and it may not be good for your mic either. So we're going to test a common plosive phrase with all these just to get a sense of how well they work at reducing pops. So first off, I'm going to speak directly into the microphone, and then I'll do at an angle, and then we'll go through the filters. So here's the phrase: Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Now, if I speak at an angle, the breath should not be an issue. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. And does this sound just as good as speaking directly into the microphone? I don't know. It sounds a little different. It does get rid of the plosives, but perhaps it changes the sound too much in a negative way. Here's the included windscreen, and I'll speak directly into the microphone. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That seems to work pretty well. Next, we'll try the gold Nady pop filter. You can get a variety of these. They're around $15 or $20 online, I believe. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Here is my pantyhose on a hanger DIY pop filter with only one layer of hose. Well, I guess it's two, front and back, but I'm going to double up on that in a minute. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That also seems to do the trick. Now I'm going to double the filtering, and I don't know that this is necessary, but we might as well test it out. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. That does seem to darken the sound a little bit. It's not terribly noticeable, but, well, we'll see in post. Maybe I will notice the difference. I can already hear that it's a little bit darker with the pop filter in front of my mouth than without, but it does work. Lastly, I've got the mesh straining filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Now, does that change the sound very much? Perhaps a little bit. I can seem to hear some slight difference, but it's not huge. Seems to work pretty well. How big of a difference do we get between the gold pop filter on and off? Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Does it seem to affect the sound at all? I don't hear much, maybe a tiny bit, but very little as far as I can tell. Back again is the included foam windscreen of the microphone. So here's how it sounds without the foam windscreen, and I'm talking directly into the capsule. And let's put it on. Check 1, 2. Here is the microphone with the foam windscreen. Does it sound very different? Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Taking it off again. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. I don't know that any of these seem to have a majorly detrimental effect on the sound of the microphone, but I am just listening at a lower level in my headphones, so we'll see in post. Maybe you will hear a bigger difference on your end when you're watching this. Prior to shooting this, I already did my white noise test, and what I did was put the microphone close to my monitor speakers and run a clip of white noise and record that without the pop filter, and then with each of these pop filters in succession. And I also kept the distance between the pop filter and the microphone equal, about 3 inches off the microphone. The distance of the pop filter probably doesn't make a huge difference, but if it does, they were at least kept even. Now, the results were more or less what I would expect. I thought that the DIY pantyhose might fare a little better, and it does seem to do just a fine job. All these pop filters didn't seem to affect the sound very much in any of the tests. However, perhaps the worst faring one was the DIY pantyhose one. Now, if you need a pop filter and you don't have anything else, you don't want to spend the money on buying one, then this is not a terrible option, though these foam windscreens are also quite cheap. If you find one that fits your mic, mounting it to your mic stand can be a little tricky. Using a wire hanger, I was able to sort of mount it on the stand, but not perfectly, and it's a bit janky. So I would say mounting this is going to be a problem, whereas a foam windscreen, quite easy. You just put it on. So the DIY ones have that disadvantage. They're a little harder to mount on your microphone, and that's not great. The pantyhose filter, especially with 2 layers, seem to affect the sound of the mic the most. I can already hear a little bit of the top end being a little softer. Now, doesn't make a huge difference. It's not the end of the world. Certainly works in a pinch, but this was the worst performing by a small amount, and it reduces the highs about 3 dB or so in my tests. The rest of them were less than that, which means that's a pretty small difference. In that case, you're probably better off using a filter than trying to talk at an angle, because I believe that talking at an angle will affect the sound much more than using a filter. So while it may look cool and be a little more dangerous to go without a pop filter, it seems like the differences are minor enough that you might as well use one, because dealing with plosives in editing or having to live with them is not the best thing, and speaking at an angle and doing some fancy trick with the microphone is also going to change the sound. So in conclusion, I think you're best off just using a pop filter. The differences in sound are pretty minimal, and I don't think you're going to ruin any recordings using a pop filter. This Nady gold pop filter did perform the best in terms of being the most neutral sound, and they're easy to mount with a flexible arm that you can put right on the mic, and I don't hear any difference right now between the two. If there is some, it's very minimal. So I would recommend that if you need a pop filter. That seems to be the best bet. And the holes are angled, so it should actually be facing downwards with the arm going underneath. If you're mounting it normally on a upright stand, that would be probably how you would do it anyways, but the holes in this grate are at a slight angle, which is actually a copy of a more expensive pop filter that run, I don't know, $40 or something. I forget who the manufacturer was, but it was designed that way so the air goes in and goes down at an angle. I don't know how much it matters if you use it upside down or something, but I suppose we can test how effective it is. Check 1, 2. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So it does seem to be much more effective in its upright position with the arm underneath than upside down. Don't know how often you'd be mounting it upside down, but I guess don't do that. So that's what I've got for you today. I hope you're a pop filter expert now, ready to tackle all the plosives in your life. So as always, smash like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.